I tell you, may you live in interesting times. I think this is interesting, spooky, and empire changing. I think we're watching the end of the American empire. There's a law called Gresham's Law. And Gresham's Law says bad money drives out good money. So this is bad money here. It's called the US dollar. I call it toilet paper today. And this is good money here. This is silver and this is gold. So what happened in 71, they took the gold out of this toilet paper right here. And in 64, they took it out of our silver coins. So Gresham's Law is in action today. America has been kind of a bully because we had the reserve currency of the world. The thing we're going to be talking about today is what happens if and when Mexico joins the BRICS. What are the repercussions? What are the shockwaves? What's going to happen? Or as they say in Hispanic, ¿qué pasa? What's going to happen?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, the BRICS formation is something that I have been singularly focused on for the last few years, certainly. And I think it's really very, very, very important. And, I'd like to first throw out that so many things are happening all around us. And while they're significant, these individual events in and of themselves have less significance than when you put them all together. And the things that are happening inside, the blunders, if you will, that are happening inside the United States only exacerbate the consequences that are happening and the realities that are happening outside the border. In other words, the US blunders, I believe, are inspiring the rest of the world, the international community, to unite in opposition to it and in joint establishment of mutually beneficial platforms of politics and economy and trade and currency and finance and culture and education and international security and all of these things that, as you mentioned, the bullying and the sanctions and the hegemony and the hypocrisy of the West, I believe, is coming to an end. And it is those types of actions by the West that I think has squandered the good graces that we have had for many years of the international community.
America has pissed off the rest of the world. We've been the bully with this thing. We're now a credit-based economy. In other words, we print fake money and we spread it throughout the world. But the rest of the world is actually producing the food, the gold, the silver, the machinery, and all this. So finally, the rest of the world said, enough's enough. So I remember years ago operating in South Africa a lot. I love South Africa. But they joined the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. That was the original BRICS. And now they're gaining force and momentum. And I think people have heard the word BRICS, but very few people know what caused the BRICS to form, Andy. What does it mean to us? Because otherwise, so what,
I think by the end of this discussion, people will certainly understand it. But you're right. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa comprise the BRICS. These are countries that are uniting in common interests and doing it without the bullying, if you will, of the Western hegemony. And they're beginning to set themselves apart from the rest of the world.
Why do you think they're so important today? I mean, they're the most powerful force in the world today.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, this coalition of countries standing up against the Western hegemony. And that's really what it is. It's not just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. You have well over a dozen countries that have already applied, such as Algeria and Argentina and Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Nicaragua, Turkey, Indonesia, Senegal, Nigeria, Afghanistan, Egypt, Kazakhstan, and the biggest one of all, Saudi Arabia, formally applied to the BRICS nations. So when you talk about this growing cohesion of countries, there are others that they're already set their eyes on. And in Brazil's backyard, you have Argentina. In Latin America, you have Nicaragua. All of these countries and their neighbors that are growing together are forming a massive, very imposing, not only from a GDP, but you put all these countries together and their military might is very, very strong as well. And those are the BRICS plus. Now they're talking about adding more countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Bolivia, Chile, Cuba, Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, Venezuela, Azerbaijan, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. The list goes on and on and on.
What that means is right now they're dealing in this. 1944, this became the reserve currency of the world right after World War II at the Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Like I said, this is toilet paper today because this is now fake money. So the rest of the world is saying enough of you sending us your toilet paper. You take our materials, you take our production, you take this, and you send us this trash here. So that's what Andy is talking about is so crucial. The average person can't see it. So now can you go into the Belt and Road project
Equally as important to being forced to take the dollar is if you are on the wrong side on the Western ideology, then you get sanctioned, you get kicked out of SWIFT. And the weaponizing of the dollar, I think, is what has accelerated the union of all of these countries. The SWIFT system is basically the oxygen that is needed for cross-border payments to breathe. In other words, you're not allowed to send your money from one country to another unless it routes through the SWIFT system, which is basically a computer system, if you will, or a message board system that allows banks to trade money back and forth and clearing through a US settlement bank system. So in order to trade dollars, you have to have access to the SWIFT system. And if you are kicked out of the SWIFT system, you cannot trade dollars. And if you can't trade dollars, you can't buy oil and you can't sell your goods globally. In essence, it isolates you. Well, unless, of course, you're trading your Iran and you're trading your oil to China for the petro yuan bond, which is immediately convertible.
But didn't America exercise SWIFT? They punished a whole bunch of countries just recently.
Absolutely. No better example than what they did with Russia, kicking them out of SWIFT. And you saw what Russia did in retaliation. They are selling their goods in gold and in rupee and for ruble and for yuan, and they are sidestepping. It is this bullying, as you said at the beginning, it is this hypocrisy that is making everyone come to the table. I want to mention one thing that's really very interesting. We talk about the glue, right? The glue that makes all of this stick is the backing of a new system with commodities such as gold. So check this out. The gold holdings as a percentage of reserves, these are all countries that have either applied to the BRICS or are already in it. Venezuela, 82% of their reserves are in gold. Uzbekistan, 65%. Kazakhstan, 63%. Bolivia, 55%. Belarus, 40%. Turkey, 29. Turkey was the largest importer of gold in the world last year and has continued being the largest importer of gold. And as of last year, when I put these numbers down at the very end of the year, Turkey had 29% of their reserves in gold, and that's grown. Pakistan, 29. Kyrgyzstan, 22. These countries are accumulating the glue that will make this cohesion stick. Now, when we talk about the Belt Road Initiative, which is very important to the whole thing, right? There's several groups that are all tied together like this. The Belt Road, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the BRICS, and the Eurasian Economic Union. The Belt Road Initiative has every one of the 13 OPEC producing countries on the Belt Road, the largest infrastructure project in human history. It's all connecting through trade routes, if you will. For example, the north-south corridor that connects from Iran to India and allows Iran and Russia and India to trade without going around waters that are patrolled by the US Navy. It allows them to have the ability to reach each other much more quickly and without the Western influence. And all of these routes and all of these agreements are bringing the world together against the West.
It was called the Silk Road.
It's the exact same thing. It's more than that, too. You have this deal, and if you look at what China is doing, right now you have Iran and Iraq, of all countries who've hated each other for centuries, are currently in a brokered deal by China in the final stages of the first rail connection between the two states in history. And they can easily connect. It's a 1,500 kilometer railway. They can also connect Syria and Lebanon, all part of the Belt Road Initiative. You have other Gulf states that are coming together like the UAE and Kuwait. But all of this, none of them more important than what just happened. And that is the Chinese mediated Iran-Saudi Arabia deal, where they're now building, for the first time ever, they're putting embassies in each other's countries. And they are coming together in what is mutual cooperation, where everyone economically cooperates in mutually beneficial ways with a view not only towards building common destiny, but this represents a massive nail in the Western hegemony, where all of these countries, where the West has really precipitated and this constant bickering, China's coming in and building infrastructure in Africa, in South America, in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in Iraq, and all of these countries, they come in, they build infrastructure, and they are creating cooperation.
And that's why the name of the company, the big 80-pound Magilla gorilla behind of it, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they're the Magilla behind the whole thing, where it used to be the dollar.
They're all coming together. When you put all of these together, you're talking 80% of human population coming together against the Western hegemony. And the glue that will make it stick is the pledging of commodities to the system. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has told the world that they want to have a settlement currency for the entire Eurasian landmass backed by gold.
See, for years, we've been able to ship this toilet paper throughout the world. Gresham's law, when bad money chases out good money. So what the US has been doing for a long time, they've been shipping people toilet paper, and they've been shipping us commodities like wheat, grain, oil, food, gold, silver, finished goods, and things like this. The world said, we've had enough of this. And so years ago, when I was in South Africa, I heard South Africa join. I said, what are these guys? And now it's coming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And what Andy's talking about, the Belt and Road, is not really a road trade route, just supply routes. They can be a water trade. It's called the sea routes also. That's what I went to school to do, is drive ships for the supply chains throughout the world. So all the people that have been giving America cheap or wonderful goods for toilet paper is coming to an end. Is that what you're saying, Andy?
It is. And the Belt Road Initiative, those trade routes, the maritime channels, the bridges, the railways, the roads, will only be patrolled by military and by commerce. This is the Panama Canal on steroids. And when you realize that there's 150 plus countries on the Belt Road, you're talking all of these entities together comprise well north of 80% of human population. This is a big deal because these entities are not going green, and we are. And when you see Saudi Arabia join this union, not only the BRICS, but the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and with the rest of OPEC on the Belt Road, it starts to come together like, whoa, they're going to say to the world, hey, we're done with just taking dollars. When that happens, it's a very big problem. And that's why you're seeing rumors of Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and now Mexico signing up for the BRICS nations or for their economic union. This is a big deal. It's little by little by little by little. All of these pieces, which in and of themselves are not as relevant until you look at the big picture. And you're talking the majority of human population joining together in a drive for prosperity, and one that is based upon mutual benefit rather than being under the thumb of the West and the Western influence.
Deception, betrayal, collusion. And those days are coming to an end. We've betrayed the rest of the world. We've given them fake money. We screw them if they don't on the SWIFT system. We're a bully out there.
I mean, look what the European Union just did with the sanction money that they took from Russia. They didn't just sanction it, they now confiscated it. And this is a very, very, very big problem. I think that is only exacerbating. And that's why I often wonder, in the recesses of my mind late at night when I'm laying in bed, was this all intended? When you weaponize the dollar and make everyone think, geez, am I on the wrong side of the West? I better make alliances with the other countries who are all moving away from that system. And you have to ask yourself, when we have a $31 trillion debt, 76 trillion unfunded in Social Security, about 130 or 40 trillion in funded and unfunded liabilities. And so is the game over? By doing what they are doing, were they finding a scapegoat? Xi Jinping, Saudi Arabia, Russia, the OPEC countries, are they finding a villain that they can point to? Where most people in this country, that's all they need to hear and they'll believe it, instead of realizing that the brain-dead monetary policy of the West and our bullying of the world has led us to this point. And I think that's what is bringing everyone to the table, and what makes it work will be the backing of commodities and the immutability and veracity of those commodities. If they do it right, pledge to a distributed ledger with auditing done and transparency, and like that, it's over. Because the world will dump dollars if they no longer need to own them to buy oil, and flock to a system of mutual beneficial understanding and cooperation and transparency.
So what's happening now are the BRICS are saying no more of this garbage, because you've been printing this stuff. That's called counterfeiting. You know, that'd be like me going to your restaurant and giving you fake money. And you're giving me real food, real service, you have labor cost, taxes, and all this stuff. But I keep giving you fake money. And that's what the United States has been doing for years now, especially since 64 and 71, when they took silver, replaced our coins, and gold replaced this fake dollar. That's what Andy is talking about. And the world is going to say, we're going to put the world on a real money, a real commodity, oil, food, things like this schedule. So this thing is trash. That's what you're saying, isn't it, Andy?
It's 100% what I'm saying. And for the first time, only a decade ago, and especially in and of themselves, these countries would not have ever been able to stand up to the West. That's why you hear people say, well, it's the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry hamper, or as Doug Casey says, the prettiest mare at the slaughterhouse, that being the dollar. No one has ever been able to stand up against the West. But this union of countries joining together for mutual beneficial relationships, mending broken fences, centuries old. Iraq and Iran, Saudi Arabia and Iran, these countries that have hated each other are now rallying against the old saying, my enemy's enemy is my friend. And Iran and Saudi Arabia have just, on behalf of China's brokering, have just started new relations, putting embassies in each other's countries. They are beginning to find a common ground. And that's the thing, is that they're finding a way to cooperate. And that's the most important thing, is that that's what the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Belt Road Initiative, and the BRICS is about. That's the rallying cry. Let's all get over here against the West, against the big schoolyard bully. But the way to make it work is to make everyone have equal footing. Like if you look at the BRICS, and I don't know how many years each one has, but their presidency rotates. It's not one central player like China. It rotates. They're already getting that right. You allow everyone equal footing. And how do you do that? Everyone pledges a commodity, just like we were told is going to happen with the BRICS currency. Everyone pledges a commodity to the system and using distributed ledger technology to show the veracity of it.
So is distributed ledger, do I call that blockchain or am I?
Yes, they will use blockchain to show what each country has pledged to the system.
So that's a deception, betrayal, collusion. That's the world we live in right now.
And that's what is fostering this union of countries.
Well, let's say Mexico. Do you remember the 60s? There was a thing called the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's because, Havana or Cuba went Russian and they were putting missile bases there. So now today you're telling us that Mexico, who's closer than Cuba, and they're a big trading partner, a lot of food and things that come from Mexico. What does it mean if and when, and I think there's more when, Mexico joins the BRICS? What's going to happen? What's the ripple effect from that?
First of all, they're the second largest economy in South or Latin America. And, I think you could take this out, use your mind's eye and extrapolate this out. Let's just say they do join the BRICS. And this puts a lot of things into context when you think about it this way. Let's just say 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now that they're deeply entrenched with the BRICS nations. They're in with the BRICS. They're trading with the BRICS. They still are friendly with the United States, but they're trading with the BRICS. They're using the BRICS settlement currency. And let's just say that the BRICS have some sort of like a NATO, but it's with the BRICS. Can you only imagine the way that we would feel having military bases right outside Texas on the border of Mexico with Chinese and Russian military? I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just thinking out loud. But put that into context when you think about what Russia's dealing with NATO encroaching. And you can understand the way they feel. Now, I am not condoning war. I am not condoning anything. I'm just saying, think about this in a broader context. What if something like that happened? That part of this deal, because the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is also a military cooperation organization. That's part of it. So what if that happened and you have military bases right on the US-Mexico border that are BRICS united? Now, maybe that's way out there, maybe that doesn't happen, but I think when you talk about this union between Mexico and the BRICS nations, it's another piece like in the game of Jenga. When you keep pulling out pieces against the Western hegemony, bang, something falls. It's going to, one of these days it falls.
But the start, when Mexico joins the BRICS, we're going to have to start dealing in Chinese crypto yuan, is what you're saying.
Well, it could very well be, yes. I mean, there's still a long way to go from applying to being accepted and a full member. So let's not confuse that. There's a long way to go. But the fact that they are moving in that direction, the fact that we hear rumors that Australia, New Zealand, and Japan are moving in that direction, it's just more nails in the coffin of the Western hegemony. It's a big deal. It's a huge deal. If all of a sudden the majority of the world is trading in a new settlement currency and the dollar is rendered worthless, either the US has to pivot and do something of their own with a gold-backed, like we talked about before, a gold-backed International Monetary Fund special drawing rights, or we'll get with the game and in order to trade with the majority of the world, it will be in a new currency.
That's beyond my brain right now. Look at the banks that just went down. What was Janet Yellen saying?
If I have a constituent in Oklahoma who has $5 million in a regional bank and it goes under, will he be bailed out? And she said, no. You just bailed out Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank. Why would you not bail out all of these regional banks? And she basically said it would have to be supermajority decision from the FOMC, the FDIC, and me, Janet Yellen, where we will decide if those banks that are not systemically too big to fail get bailed out or not. It will be whether or not we believe that the systemic reaction from that bank going down will create too big a ripple effects. We'll take the opposite side of that. If you live in a small town where the bank has helped you build a business or helped you get from where you were to where you are and you have your life savings in that bank, how safe do you feel with that money in the bank after what she just said? Probably not very. So you're going to yank that money out and send it over to Bank of America or Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or wherever it is and have all the money concentrated in a handful of banks, because these regional banks, unless they're systemically connected, evidently they felt that Signature Bank was and Silicon Valley Bank was. If not, goodbye, you're done.
Anyway, what Andy is talking about here is called the Communist Manifesto, 1848. Are banks in America going to a centralized banking? As close to communism, because we don't have capitalism anymore. I call it Marxist monetary theory. So what is MMT?
It's just basically you print as much money as you want to solve the problem. But that doesn't work in a globalized economy where the rest of the world says, why do we want your dollar that is worthless? And that's why all of these countries are using commodities, in particular gold, and its revaluation by the Bank of International Settlements in 2019 as a high quality liquid asset, in essence, tier one. They're accumulating things that are real, and they are going to use them to back a new system, while the West...
We're following right now, the Bank of International Settlements is a central bank.
That is correct.
And what they said in 2017 was that gold is now money.
They see what's coming and they're moving ahead of this.
Yep.
And the rest of us in this country are more concerned about things that are just completely missing the ball when the rest of the world is growing together in a very tight-knit group.
You know, when Rich Dad Poor Dad, I said savers are losers. And what Andy is talking about, why I've said that years and years ago, 25 years ago now.
Yeah, if you save in dollars, you will be a loser.
You don't want to say you keep your gold at home because you'll be visited immediately. You know, I mean, it's not the brightest thing to do.
If you can hold it yourself and remove all counterparty risk, remember, gold and silver are some of the only assets in the world that are not simultaneously someone else's liability, like that dollar, like your deposit in a bank, like a security, like a bond. Those are all have counterparty risk. Holding gold and silver in your own possession is complete and total removal of counterparty risk. And I believe you have a greater chance of being ripped off by the system, by the banks, by everything than you do by someone coming to your home thinking you have gold and silver in it.
So the whole point here is this: we don't save this. We store gold and silver coins. If a push comes to a shove and this thing, I don't know what's going to happen to this thing because it's toilet paper, but our employees are protected because we want to make sure that our most valuable asset, which are the people that work for us, are taken care of.
If you're not a contrarian, you're going to be a victim. And if all of your wealth is held in dollars and dollar-based assets, you're destined to go broke or have your money taken from you by a bank that has made poor decisions and goes upside down. Get prepared. Check it out. Do a little research. Look at some of the things that we were talking about and Google them and read about it. And I think you'll see that this is getting real, and the speed at which it is increasing is really the frightening part.